Welcome back to Good Day State Line. One of our favorite GDS dads is back with us tonight. Perfect for Father's Day week. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Always love coming.
Tim Mahoney, of course. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, because last time you were here, we were almost at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very long trial.
It was. 6-week trial. That's a very long trial. I mean, most trials are 2, 3, 4, 5 days. 6 weeks is a tremendously long trial. So, and last time we were right at the end, and we predicted, we thought Johnny was going to win.
We were correct. Well, you were correct. I just stood here.
It's your show. You were correct. So one of the things that you were asking about was Johnny won and Amber won.
Yes.
Okay, so the initial lawsuit filed by Johnny, Amber countersued for defamation also. And Johnny won the majority of his counts against them. When you file a lawsuit, you'll have a lot of times different counts, different ways that you could be victorious, okay? So it could be 1 theory, 2 theory, 3 theories. So he won on most of his. She countersued on defamation also based upon some conduct by one of his lawyers who said, and because it's an employee of his, then he's responsible for the acts of his employee acting within the scope of their authority. That's a rule in the United States. The lawyer said that this had been a hoax on her part and her and her friends had roughed her up in order to look a certain way.
Okay.
Well, the jury believed that in fact didn't happen and that was defamation. So they awarded her $2 million in addition to his $15 million verdict against her. That's not all that uncommon.
Okay.
It's pretty common you have countersuits, okay? It's pretty common that if one person sues, the other person sues back for something else.
And they take place at the same time.
And
that's common too?
Absolutely. That matter of fact, that has to kind of happen that way most of the time. If they arise out of the same conduct, then they're going to take place at the same time. That's judicial economy and just kind of makes sense. So he won $15 million against her, and then she won $2 million against him.
What gets me is I have such a linear brain. All I just want to do is subtract it.
Well, that's what would happen.
How did she possibly win $2 million? Because she didn't.
Right, and that's what would happen. Would be his verdict would be reduced by the amount of her verdict.
So that's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then one of the other questions was, well, then the judge reduced part of his verdict also.
Right.
What was that all about? Okay. Well, he got $10 million in compensatory damages. That's lost wages, income, and obviously that number, it is what it is. The jury picked that number. So he got $10 million in compensatory damages and then $5 million in punitive damages. And punitive damages are rarely available and they're designed to punish. That's why they're called punitive. Well, there's a cap on punitive damages in that state. The cap was $350,000.
Okay.
So the jury doesn't know that, all right? So the jury awarded $5 million in punitive damages, so the judge reduced that to $350,000. So Johnny's verdict is $10,350,000. Her verdict is $2 million, so his verdict is going to be reduced by her verdict.
Okay, so how long does somebody have to pay that?
Well, you get a judgment, and so the judgment, and again, this depends on the particular state, and I'm not licensed in that particular state. Break the fourth wall. So you get a judgment.
My favorite thing to do. That's fine.
And the judgment's going to incur interest, and in the state of Illinois, that's 9%. And then you can collect the judgment in any way that anybody could collect a judgment. So you can garnish wages, you can attach bank accounts. I don't think any of them own any property in that state, so you'd have to go to the state where she owns property and have to register the judgment in that state and then start to collect. There'd be a process that you have to go through. But let's be honest, Johnny doesn't care about the number. He cares about getting his career back, which he clearly did.
Right, and because of what you said, because I didn't really realize that the jury said, okay, we want to give them X amount of money.
Yes.
Because sometimes people are suing for X amount of money, right? So that wasn't happening here?
No, the jury, most of the time when people sue, it's for money damages.
Okay.
So when the state brings criminal charges against somebody, it's to take away your liberty, it's to take away your freedom, it's to put you in jail or put you on probation. When two individuals sue each other, an individual can be a person, as in human, or it can be a corporation, or it can be partnership. When they sue each other, then it's typically for money damages, or it could be for an injunction or something, but most of the time it's for money damages. You did something wrong to me, so I'm suing you to compensate me for what you did that was wrong.
All right, so the last question, do you think that there's going to be an appeal?
Probably,
like a big one, like we're going to get to take some time off of work and watch it on our desks.
Well, usually, again, most of the time appeals stuff is not publicized, but you never know. I mean, in this case, it might end up being publicized. But my guess would be, sure, why wouldn't she? I mean, it's over a $10 million verdict. Her net worth is supposedly less than $2 million. Why not appeal and ask the appellate court to at least reduce the amount of the verdict, and also a good time to negotiate. Now, the one thing is, though, if she puts up an appeal, she's got to put up a bond for the appeal. So great time to negotiate and try to resolve the case. I'm going to appeal. Well, you got to put up a bond. Well, let's sit down and see if we can figure this out. You know, and I mean, Johnny might do that because he'd be like, what do I care if I get $2 million or $10 million? He doesn't care.
He wants to go get a paycheck somewhere else.
He wants to go make another movie, which is going to happen.
I was going to say, which we can probably bet on. Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Happy early Father's Day.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to everybody.
And coming up next, why video games are actually good for your kids, and then we're talking Tuesday Trends. We'll be right back.